I've seen briefly this report also that we are saying that telecom is a very successful model in Pakistan. But I think there's a lot of difference between the telecom business and the power business. Power entities are natural monopolies. So what you were saying actually, that how we actually circumvent this thing that the transmission company does not become monopoly. One route is what you are suggesting, that there should be private transmission companies. That route has also been followed in many countries, even in Pakistan. I think most of you might be knowing that we have a private transmission line already. But again, they are selling services to their service provider to the NTDC. But the way the power sector privatization and deregulation looks at it, this plan has been finalized that we are going to break or split the NTDC into 3 companies. The wire business will be with one company, which is the National Grid company, and they will only own wire. I mean, their business will be separate. They will own wire. The electricity being transmitted on the wire will not be the ownership of NTDC or the CPPA. So this is a separate agreement between the buyer and the seller. And as said by Sajid Saab, this company will only be getting toll or wheeling charges for like motorway. So they will be getting wheeling charges. And there will be, there are the model which has been approved by CTBCM. There are certain penalties on this company that if they can't transmit power, if they have entered into agreement. So these are generally this is being done in most of the countries, because this is, as said earlier, this is such a huge investment in this infrastructure that you can't have 2 transmission lines in the same area. That is waste of resources from economic point of view also. And again, that cost heavy. In fact, that will actually increase the cost for the consumer, because these companies has to recover their cost plus profit, whatever, from the consumer. So I think that's the model which is being adopted, and this is most commonly used model. UK model I was looking has been mentioned here. I think that's the same model. So even at the consumer level, on the retail level, there is the same traffic line is coming to same distribution line is coming to my home. So this is my choice that if next month I want to change my electricity supplier, I just have to give a phone call that next month this will be a supplier, and no one will come actually to visit my home. It's only billing which is being changed. Previously, you were being packaged like telecom companies. You were getting package from A company, now you are getting package from B company. So your rates and your usage will be billed accordingly. So I think that's the model which is globally used actually to eliminate the competition. Coming from Private Power Infrastructure Board, PPIB, my organization, probably I'm one of the most strongest supporter of private sector coming into the transmission line, and hopefully we'll be able to do some transmission lines in the private sector. We've done one under the CPAC, which is the only one so far in Pakistan. But we are planning once this, you might be aware there's a 10-year generation expansion plan which is under preparation now, I think, for a long time. So part of that is the transmission system expansion plan. So once that is finalized, then there will be a decision that which project will be done in the public sector and which will be done in the private sector. I'm sure there will be some project which will be done in the private sector, but again, since this is a natural monopoly, so we are working on what is the right model. The previous model which we are using, which is not a wrong model, but basically where our single buyer is there, the capacity payment is essential. So you have to make a fixed payment to keep them running, because as I think from CPPA has been said, that in summer we have 28,000 peak demand and maybe 17,000 off peak, but in winter it is exactly reverse. We have 6,000, 7,000 off peak and 12,000 peak demand. So when we have a single buyer, so these companies has to survive for the 6 or 5 winter months. So they need to make payment to the lenders, return on equity, their own security. So capacity payment is not a very unusual thing which we are being made. So where we have actually gone wrong, I think probably this is not answer to your question, but where we have gone, I think not wrong, but we could not foresee, there are a few parts. One is that whenever we do the planning, even today, We are very optimistic. We are very bullish that the economy will grow. And I think we have made this mistake at least 3-4 times in last 4 decades, that we always say that our GDP will grow at 5% consistently. And when you say GDP 5% growth, that means there is a correlation between the GDP growth and the electricity consumption use. So we have not been able to achieve. I think if I go into history, it would be too long. Starting from mid-90s, we said this, that in 94 policy, 5% will be GDP growth. We committed the IPPs. And come 1998, we did the nuclear explosion, which is a very good thing. But the result was that we put the sanctions and all that, and our GDP growth for 2 years was negative. So what to say of 5% increase? Same thing happened in 2008, 2009. But again, I think this is to some extent is a planning failure, because we could not foresee. But this time what I see, when we did CPAC in 2013, 14, 15, when this was at a planning stage, basically again we were looking at 5% GDP growth. May not be 5%, but at least some GDP growth. But these plants start coming into operation by 2018, 19, and we saw the COVID in 2019 that actually shattered the global economy. So even the very well and developed economies, what to say of Pakistan. And the second thing, which I think since the topic is the deregulation, I think there is a silent regulation and silent deregulation in the Pakistan power sector on 2 accounts. One is the rooftop solar, which has added 3,400 megawatt by end of October. I think end of November figure will be further high. So this 3,400 megawatt has come as a big competition to the grid. So I think when we were planning in 13, 14, 15, nobody thought that solar will actually hit the ground and the price will be so low that everybody will be putting up the solar. So I think these 2 factors has actually made all our projection wrong. So that's why we are facing the higher capacity payment, because we are not able to sell. There are plants on which the annual capacity factor is like 10%, 15%, 20%. Even some of our coal-based plants, which are supposed to run as a base load at 70, 80, 90%. So they also run at some time at 40% and year. So I think these are some of the dynamics we are facing. I think looking at this issue from, I would say, in good faith or a positive perspective, you can think of a government, if I talk about 2008, 2009, 2012, 13, you look at a political government and there's a 18-hour load shedding in some part of the country, and there's a 12-hour load shedding in Islamabad, which is the capital. So what kind of pressure that political government has? You remember, लोग आग लगा रहे थे, riots हो रहे थे, लोग दफ्तर जला रहे थे. तो वो जो आपकी बात है ना, I think that is to some extent correct कि हम थोड़ा कर सकते थे. But again the problem is कि जो power plants है, they are not off the shelf project. So you start developing, you do the feasibility, you do the financial close, you start construction. So this is at least 5 to 7 year process for a normal size thermal plant. If you go into the hydropower plants, I think they are 8 to 10 years, 12 years. So I think that's the problem, that you have to plan early. Otherwise, you will lag behind. But again, I think that getting the planning right is important. On the transmission side, I think, as I said earlier, we're splitting into 3 companies. Transmission side definitely has a problem. But again, just to be giving some credit to NTDC, basically, for the power plant side, it's a very easy business. There is a compound, there is a boundary wall. You have to get the land and build a power plant. So you have a EPC contractor, so they build it up and the story is over. But for NTDC, number one, that we actually have added about 15,000 megawatt in the last 7 years. So to complement and to support this is a big task for any single company, because this is throughout the country, thousands of kilometers of transmission line we're talking. So they did not have the capacity and they did not have the required resources to do that. That's the one reason. The second reason, again, it's a difficult, there is many right-of-way issue, there are many lease issue, there are many ownership issue. So you go and file a stay in the lower court, and then the whole thing is stopped. So, but again, I think better, this could have been done in a better way. But I think we need to improve that, and we are improving that because we are doing this restructuring of the NTDC, and we are actually trying to get more private sector into this thing. Now, if I briefly say about this deregulation versus privatization, which should be before and which should be after, I think I'll be a bit handicapped because I have not listened to the whole discussion. But what I have skimmed through this report just in a few minutes, my opinion is that probably we need to take both things together. Unfortunately, we have seen in Pakistan that for the last 3 decades, we have been trying to do the privatization of the distribution company, and so far success is only K Electric. There are some good lessons in that, and there are some bad lessons in that. So we need to learn from that. Now, saying that we first do the deregulation in itself is a big job. So my own opinion, if I say briefly, that these both things should go hand in hand. Once you do privatization, I think there's a chance that you create a competition. If there are 2 distribution companies discussed privatized and there are 7 in the public sector, so I think that create a clear benchmark that what is happening. So there is a lot of incentive, a lot of reasoning with the government, with the regulator, with the boards, that they should look and that there are the same distribution companies, what they are doing and what you are doing. So these both things should do together. For the governments, I think it's very difficult to leave the control. This is not only Pakistan, I think this is a problem with all developing countries. So probably there's a bit of struggle in terms of deregulation. But to some extent, I think deregulation has been done. As you quoted the example of the rooftop solar. So we, a few years back, we said that, okay, 25 kilowatt system will not require any approval if you want to set up. And for even larger system, if you are setting up for your own purpose, you don't need any lessons from NEPRA. So I think that is a big sort of deregulation. Previously, if you have to set up a 10 kilowatt system, you have to go and get permission from NEPRA. But the downside of this is that, as I said, that there is a 3.4 gigawatt or 3,400 megawatt added in the rooftop solar. We have exact data that how much solar has been installed. But in whole country with the government, we don't have any data that how much captive has been installed. My personal opinion is probably more than 3,400 megawatt captive has been installed by the industry, by the commercial units, even by the domestic, which is not connected to the grid. So having 8,000 megawatt of solar in the system, I think that's a big competition or big issue for the grid, because government committed this capacity in the long-term contract for these consumers which are now going away. So this problem is actually manifold, because as said earlier, that our premier customer, which are not only paying time where the losses are limited, they are cross-subsidizing some domestic and the other consumers. So they are leaving the system. Either they are leaving system or they are not getting power from the system. And I think that's the I would say fear, founded or unfounded, that's a long debate, that the government and the power sector has not been able to launch the CTBCM, competitive trading wholesale market. But what I listen and what I hear, inshallah, most likely in the next year, will be able to launch this competitive trading bilateral market. But again, the issue is, if this capacity payment, which is now being distributed to, let's say 40 million consumers, if we have to distribute it to 30 million consumers in the next 3, 4, 5 years, so that means those consumers which are already lower income group, so we'll be actually loading them with this cost. So I think that's the dilemma on which government is still working. NEPRA and government has a different point of view. Government CPPA says probably it should be 24, 25 rupees unit, including stranded cost and the losses and everything. NEPRA gave probably 2 rupees or something tariff. But again, I think the answer lies something in between. But what I expect that the way the things are moving, next year this wholesale market should be in place. And again, I think in terms of deregulation, people are pinning very high hope on this market, but in my assessment, probably it will not make a major dent in the first 3-4 years, because once the market is set up, people will look into the market. Obviously, there will be some teething problem also. People, before getting into the market, they would see what is happening, what is the track record, how the payments are made, how the settlements are being handled. So that is 3-4 years away. But again, we need to start somewhere. And I think that's the time was yesterday. In the original plan, if I remember correctly, probably the target was 2003 or something, when this 90s strategic plan for privatization of power sector was launched. So we are just 20 years behind in that. But again, I think the which is being done, I think, in a better way now, the planning. I think that's probably the most important element in this whole process, and matching the transmission system extension plan with the generation system, which is now being done. It may not be perfect first time, but at least the lag which we are seeing now, that has been said that from south to north transfer is a big issue, power transmission is a big issue. So these type of gaps likely would not be there. So I think, again, if I sum up, probably both the things go in hand. We should try to do maximum deregulation. But again, the deregulation in power sector has some limitations, because the wire is same on which the power is coming, and the supplier might change, and going to the retail level deregulation, I think that's a quite some time now. If we could go to the wholesale market, and we could come up some solution that what we need to do with the existing IPPs, which have a long-term contract, and obviously these are sovereign contracts guaranteed backed by the sovereign guarantees, having international arbitration clauses. So I think that's a very serious issue to look into how we want to handle it.